Neil Ratner Rock Doc here, live from London for a change. So, as many of you may know, I'm in London, and yesterday I attended the memorial tribute to my old friend Greg Lake. And let me tell you, man, it was moving, it was wonderful. I spoke, a few other people spoke, and it was really, really a special occasion, and I feel blessed and honored and incredibly lucky. I am the lucky man to have been invited here and to have been a part of that and to have been a part of the whole Emerson, Lake, and Palmer thing back at the beginning. And today, I'm actually going to tell you a story about Greg's bandmate, Keith Emerson, who we also lost in 2016, and coincidentally, yesterday would have been Greg's 70th birthday, and November 2nd was Keith's birthday. It was a very sad to lose them both so prematurely in 2016, and since I told you a little story about Greg yesterday, and I was so moved when I went yesterday, and I saw Keith's family there. Eleanor Emerson, Keith's first wife, was there, and his son and their family, and again, it made me think of Keith, and so I thought I would tell you a little story about Keith, a couple little stories about Keith that you might not know. Okay, so Keith's parents were amateur musicians, and his father, Noel, was a piano player. And when Keith was just 8 years old, he began piano lessons. But as Keith once told me, the teachers were little old ladies that taught him very little. So he, on his own, used jazz piano sheet music, right? From people like Dave Brubeck and George Shearing, and he learned about jazz piano from books. So you can imagine how excited I got when we were in Chicago on tour, and Keith asked me to go with him to see George Shearing. The show was in a small jazz club, and Keith was mesmerized, and after the show, we went back to say hello. Let me tell you, it was quite a trip for me to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. And it wasn't the last time Keith asked me to go with him. The first time I was with the group in Buffalo, New York, Keith excitedly came to me and said, "You're coming with me to Bob Moog's house." Now, I knew Moog would be at the show, but I had no idea Keith would take me to his house the day before. Moog couldn't have been nicer, although the technical conversation they had went way over my head, and it was very much a case of the Mutual Admiration Society, with each complimenting the other's works. Now, my duties as tour manager also included carrying Keith's knives. I was curious about if the knives had any special meaning for him, and I asked Keith about them. Now, what most people don't know is that Lemmy from the band Motorhead was one of the roadies for Keith's band, The Nice, and Lemmy gave Keith a very large hunting knife, which was the main knife Keith used to stab his keyboards. Now, you can be sure I took care of that knife very carefully. All right. Let's listen to a little ELP and Keith Emerson while I finish my stories. And, by the way, I'm going to play Hoedown. And every concert, that's how we started. Here we go. All right, this is a live version, a little fast, but that was the LP. All right, the last story I'm going to tell you is about the famous flying piano. We were in New York preparing to go on tour, and I needed a small van. There was a newspaper called The Bylines which advertised used vehicles, and I saw a van that looked good. It belonged to a guy named Bob McCarthy who lived on Long Island. So I sent my chief roadie, Vic, to go check it out, and if it was okay to buy it. So Vic calls me about, let me make it a little lower. Vic calls me about an hour later, totally freaked out. He insisted that I drive Keith out to Bob's house to see this special piano effect he had created. When I told Keith, he was cool and we drove out to Long Island. So we were introduced, we went into a room where there was a TV and a piano sitting in the corner. So first Bob had a tape he wanted to show us. It was an old Tonight Show with Steve Allen as the host. And believe it or not, Steve sits at the piano with the orchestra in the background and introduces the tune. The song began, and all of a sudden, Steve and the piano are spinning around. Keith and I look at each other and got hysterical laughing. As the tape went on, other members of the band began spinning as well. It was a trip. Now, of course, the piano was rigged. Below the keyboard, there was an inverted T-like bar, and you wrapped your legs around the downpipe, put your heels under the inverted T. Then you go up in the air and try to do the best you can to actually play. Keith, as you can imagine, totally blown away and had to try it. Of course, the piano was sitting there, and he soon found out that the centrifugal force of the spinning made it really difficult to play. We tried to take the stunt on the road, but after multiple equipment problems and injuries, including a broken nose, we gave up on it. But if you were lucky enough to see Keith spin in concert, I'm sure it was something you never forgot. So, when Keith finally got to meet one of his heroes, the great pianist Dave Brubeck, who was almost 90 years old at the time, and Keith tells me this story, all Brubeck wants to know was, how did you do the flying piano? And Keith's response to Dave, don't try it. There goes Keith. Let me tell you, it was a trip trying to keep his organs all tuned and ready to go every night, man. He had special people travel with him. It was a nightmare. All right, so that's it. Neil Ratner Rock Doc from London. I'll be back in Woodstock next week. Have a great Saturday, Sunday weekend, and I'll see you real soon. All right, bye. In your brain, never forget it.